So today we're going to revisit one of the topics I covered back in the day, and it's on UX resumes, one of those peripheral tools which you need to optimize to get that initial call, that screen call. And sometimes as a hiring manager, let's say, I might receive the resume before I even get to portfolio. And so as per usual, without fluffing too much, we're giving you best practices and just general advice. I'm going to take one of the resumes, which was submitted on Design Squad Discord community by one of the members, Chakib or Chakib. I might be butchering the name. And he's saying that I've never been in a company that have more than one designer, since basically I was doing all design part of the team. He's looking to join a team that already contains a group of designers, so obviously wants to learn. And so he's looking at mid or big companies. He thinks he's junior unless he's not evaluating his skills enough. He likes industries that have direct positive impact in people's lives, open to evaluate any opportunities. So you're going to see that he has some experience in the client work, his education, skills, toolkit, languages. This is pretty good. If you remember from my previous video on resumes, you don't want to over-design. Rule number one is to rather design your case studies and focus on designing actual UX work. The peripheral tools like resumes, cover letters, whatever you're gonna use, make it presentable, but don't over-design it, because the worst thing you could do is just over-design your resumes and make it pretty, but when your portfolio work is not like anywhere near that standard. Right? So think where you invest your time, basically. And I think this is good enough visually. Now, what I'm going to question here then is the content. So I blocked out his personal details. As you can see, he's from Algeria. He has some links. Immediately with the links here, I would make them stand out a little bit or give some sort of preface of what each of them means. For example, code work or submissions or projects, design work. Find out more information on LinkedIn. In my, for example, resume, which I used for quite some time, I literally, because I have, so many clients and like over a decade of experience, I only list a few different things, and then I just add the link in the end of the list and say, find out more on LinkedIn, yada yada, which has, fuller list or more information about it. So you can also consider that, because this is one pager. You shouldn't just try to submit all. I would focus on quality instead of quantity. Again, you need to saturate this resume with that you are a strong enough candidate for them to look forward or have that conversation. It's not just about the breadth. For example, myself, I like to look into peripheral links. I like to look into projects people do. So I always try to visit, especially like Behance, say some other portfolio links. But I would clearly state, this is where my work is. This is what I can do. So I know why are you adding those links and what I'm gonna get out of it as a hiring manager. Another thing is this. This is a typical thing, but I would be careful how you phrase it. Ultimately, you want to tailor your resume. So add a title you're going for, or add a title close enough, or in terms of a discipline. Let's say if you know that you're not a senior designer, don't add senior, but say that you're, let's say, product designer. If you're applying for those roles, make sure that this is clearly that. These two jobs are usually two different things and two different roles you would apply. With your work here and explanation, I would doubt that someone would hire you for app developer, because that's a hardcore, super technical skills, which, you need to know all the frameworks, libraries, yada, yada. So why would you even want that? If you know that you're going to focus on UX, make sure that you say that you love to, let's say, design user experiences with awesome products or something like that. It could be as vague as that, as an elevator pitch one-liner, or it could be specific role you like to do. And this is nitpicky, but someone who's gonna be looking for a specialist is gonna pick up that, and just indecision to market yourself clearly is gonna bite you. Now, that doesn't mean that your resume is gonna just be set in stone. If you feel like your market and you immediately need a role and someone says, oh, I just need a web designer, update your freaking resume and add a web designer and send it to them. If you have those skills, send it to them. Now, a lot of people who are entrepreneurial, which is amazing drive, amazing skill set. You have to wear so many hats. Again, you're so effective. And it's super rare to find entrepreneurial people who are entrepreneurial at heart, but then join bigger organizations and then drive massive change because they're so driven. It's amazing. However, that could also bite you if you try to market yourself as a co-founder over the product designer. So a lot of advice you might find online, and something I took myself as a lesson is when I'm, let's say, writing that, hey, I started this startup, or I started this app on my own, or I gathered people together, I never market myself as a founder or a co-founder, because that's not what job ads are. You will never, or rarely, I would say, like maybe there's a fracture of openings which says I'm looking for co-founder designer. There could be that, but then again, tailor it to that specific ad. Majority of the openings are gonna value your product design or UX research or UX generalist skills, and so make sure to draw those out whatever you did at that specific startup or that specific company which you, let's say, co-founded. Again, co-founder is not a skill, it's just a label you put yourself, meaning you wear so many hats, but show which of those hats are appropriate to the opening of that. Now, before diving into the actual content of your descriptions of the roles and what your capabilities, make sure to also add headlines. So for example, this is your experience, right? This is your education. These are your skills, tools. UXing of actual peripheral tools still matter just a little bit. So I would make it easier for me to scan and understand what is what. And since you're looking for junior and midweight roles, experience definitely is going to be number one, what I would look at. Skills probably would be the second one, or the education, depends how related it is to UX. For example, you have networking, distribution, computing systems, mathematics. They're less relevant to the UX, right? It's still experience and you might touch a lot of different skills, but I would probably push an education down and showcase the skills. This is what you're proficient at. And not to say that it's not important, don't delete it, but you just rearrange the order ultimately. The tools, this is to me where I'm glad that at least you didn't add those progress bars, which are meaningless, and it riles me up because it just looks lack of consideration. Too much ambiguity could mean so many different things. If you want to list out the tools and you think it's relevant to the market, make sure to add here that you are proficient with those tools. For example, Adobe tools, just added Adobe Suite. You don't need to list them out. People know it, recruiters know it already. You could list it in brackets, just save some space ultimately. The coding, Android Studio, GitHub, Trello and Slack could matter a lot, but again, consider who are you applying for. If you're applying for design roles, those tools are just apps, you know, you could use any app to, let's say, code with. It doesn't really matter. Another bit is the skills. So look at this. User research is a parent of usability testing. So this is a bit of a mixed taxonomy again and hierarchy of the skill sets. Consider if you want to be specific or do you want to be broad and you know, kind of lose that depth. Don't mix things up. Don't make it apples and oranges. User research matters for that role and your skills are top notch. Then why not to add it in brackets and explain what user research means and what exactly you're proficient in. It's as simple as that. Or the same as applies to your low to high fidelity design and prototyping. You could just say product design and in brackets lo-fi, hi-fi, whatever. That should make sense a little bit. Now programming, problem solving, teamwork, team management, teaching, all of these could also be summarized with leadership or management skills and in brackets. Just make sure to utilize the space and don't mix up the scales or don't mix up the layers. Also for programming, why not to add the languages you're proficient with? Like, for example, you could list them out if your market requires you to be a bit of an engineer on a side, or it's more like a web design still. And having said that, as a segue, as you can see, you also are listing here. So it's almost like two places. Figure out if you want to list it out at all or not, and if that actually matters much if you apply for design roles. Again, something to consider. And going back to education, I also want to ask you, and this might be relevant to a lot of different people. During your studies, did you learn anything which is relevant to user experience, design, UI, anything to do with communication, business management, strategy, opportunity assessment, things of that nature? If you did, write it out exactly what. Maybe you did a module of something. Computer science is definitely related to, let's say, user experience, and there's a lot of overlaps. You need to know enough about it. Draw out exactly how does that connect. What did you learn there? You could even like list out projects. And talking about projects, you know, what I always miss in these cases is actually having a section here saying projects, and maybe even one of the first ones saying, you know, this is a project I did, this is what I learned from it, or something like that, or add the link, adding a bit more substance to it, because your portfolio could be interpreted a lot of different ways. You could start directing people in your resume that these are the things you learned, and again, tailoring it to the actual opening so it's relevant. And now lastly, and the meatiest, the most important bit is what you say in each of the descriptions for each of the roles you did. You need to watch my previous video, and a lot of you are gonna need to watch, because it's one of those lessons which nobody talk about, which is surprising to me, but also quite disappointing when it comes to resumes, is that a lot of people default to listing out default skills which are expected of the role. And my point here is that whatever you say, if let's say you said that you were a product designer here, that automatically implies that you did product design and the skills which were there. Of course, if you are a junior or still developing, you can draw out and say, yes, I did it. Therefore, you're listing those things. As the only designer, I'm responsible of validating workflows, turning ideas into sketches to interfaces through iterations. Just say you ran ideations and prototyped the solutions or something like that. But even then, I would even take it a notch further. Why did you do that? What the outcome was of that? Did you prototype solutions and validate it so you are sure that it's successful? And in so, what did you use to assure that? I would even go further and say that you actually designed things from the very start, the inception of the ideas and opportunities for the business up until it was validated with the user successfully. And therefore you arrived at those conclusions which then linked back into the business outcomes. Is that the case? List it out, be specific, go further. Your resume should act, and especially as you develop, maybe not right now, if you are still developing and you cannot really reflect it, should reflect your achievements first and foremost, something which you did above and beyond. It should be specific, it should be measured, it should have more than just the default skill sets which everybody else puts. That's a mistake a lot of people do, because we just list out the things which are already expected and think that it's going to be good enough. You know, if someone else is going to come in and going to have this specific statement that, hey, they tripled the conversion rates with UX design by validating those ideas and iterating. Imagine how that your statement of just iterating and designing versus that compares. That other person is gonna get the call, not you. So think how you can be specific and showcase the awesome skills you did or the awesome outcomes you contributed to. Draw it out. And I don't know what they are, by the way. You need to find out. That's a hard bit. You need to commit and find that out and draw it out and define it. It's a call to action for you and everyone else, by the way. And my resume looked exactly like that, by the way, back in the day when I started out. And now as I reflect, I'm like, I could have done so much better work. And it's no surprise nobody called me back. One of your bullet points could literally be that on the UX process. Say you did user research, ideations, product design, yada, yada. Just keep it one line and then bam, 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 all the achievements, all the different outcomes you contributed to. And as you can see, this is another good example. You were an instructor, September 2019 to present. That's 3 years at least. You taught things related to graphic and UI design, right? How many students did you teach? How many students are successful? Draw those out, give me the numbers. Why not? Also, you made an online course of 8 hours long about graphic design theory and Photoshop. This is your project, which basically you could draw out here. This is one of those things where you go above and beyond, and you should be prouder than that. You should literally define exactly what does that mean and how many students actually took it, let's say. Draw out some summary and some specifics. And a lot of your things, and I think this is quite common and when you're entrepreneurial, happen at the same time, so present. So there's a lot of projects going on here. Again, try to skim and pick the ones which are relevant to the roles. Design visual identity system, mobile app landing page. Why? What was the outcome? Was it for a client? What did they got out of that? Was it to expand their reach to the customers and digital transform it? Tell that. It has to be more about the impact and the outcomes instead of just the what. It's like, I did this. Tell me why. Tell me what was the result instead of just a deliverable. Deliverables, of course, matter, but not as much as the impact or the outcomes of those deliverables, because you're doing it for a reason. Tell me exactly what was that reason, and then you're gonna be golden. This is one of those things which is missing in so many resumes. It's not just targeted at Shakib at all, because it's something you just need to change in your mindset, and it's gonna switch, and then immediately next time you're gonna tailor your resume, you're gonna update. And I'm gonna leave it on that. I hope this is useful for everyone else. Just take it a notch up and optimize your resumes. That's just gonna increase your chances that someone is gonna call you up and say, hey, come, let's talk, let's see what we can do together, and if there's a match, to proceed further. And so, as per usual, if you like this video, smash that like button, leave a comment down below, and on that note, I'll see you next time.